So it is optometry free paper. Uh, Thank you, Dr. Imran, and thank you, participants. Let's start from the first. असमा सुल्तान. तो आसमा सुल्तान में जो टॉपिक की यहाँ पे ना वो काफ़ी ज़्यादा ओवरलैपिंग है, बहुत ज़्यादा डिफरेंस है, तो आई विल नॉट बी एबल टू रीड आउट योर टॉपिक. आसमा सुल्तान.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Asma Sultan, and the topic for discussion is determination of optimum hyperparameters in diagnosis of strabismus using AI model, yani artificial intelligence model. So, first of all, we come across the objective of this study. So, this study is aimed to analyze the effectiveness of the internet-based model, which is our teachable machine, which is also known as TM platform, which does not entail any sort of coding in detection of presence of strabismus in the optimum hyperparameters. So, as you all know, that AI is a promising field in many domains of medicine regarding diagnosis and treatment of different diseases. In ophthalmology, where imaging is widely used, so the AI models can be successfully used in the disorders. So, in many disorders, such as in diabetes, retinopathy, age-related macular degeneration, however, in studies, coding hardware or paid platforms were often used. So this is the only model available on the internet which does not entitle any sort of coding. So if you do not have any sort of knowledge regarding coding, you can simply add the data into it and you can find out the type of strabismus. If we talk about the material and methods, so these are the simple images we obtain from our patients which are presented in our clinic with a complaint of ocular deviation. Total number of 523 total images were included, and all those images were taken with the help of their consent. So 176 were isotropic, 195 images are of exotropic, while 152 orthophoria images were included in the study. These are simple images having ocular deviation. Okay? There is anything else. So we simply uploaded the images to the internet available TM platform into 6 different batch sizes, and 9 different learning rates were tested using the grid search method with the number of epochs fixed at 4000 to determine the optimum hyperparameters. All the findings written in this slide, you can see the different batch sizes and 9 different learning rates. These are all available inbuilt system of that TM platform. So we have nothing to do how many change the batch sizes or the learning rates. So it is all about the inbuilt system. So actually the main objective of the study is used to test whether the AI platform which is available on the internet is used to detect the strabismus with that accuracy as compared to the humanly. अगर इंसान उसको जिस एक्यूरेसी के साथ चेक कर सकता है, क्या एआई मॉडल भी उसी एक्यूरेसी के साथ चेक कर सकता है? क्या ये प्लेटफॉर्म इतना रिलायबल है कि हम इस पर इमेजेस अपलोड करें और हमें वही रिजल्ट्स मिले जो अगर एक मैनली इंसान उसको चेक करे हमें उससे मिल सकते हैं? तो दिस इज़ अ सिंपल ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ द स्टडी. तो उसमें मटेरियल मेथड्स के बाद आफ्टर डेट मैंने बताया जैसे 6 डिफरेंट बैच साइजेस और ये सब कुछ उसमें इनबिल्ट होता है. वी हैव नथिंग टू डू कि हमें उसमें खुद से कुछ चीज़ ऐड डालनी है या सब्ट्रैक्ट करनी है. सिर्फ टोटली इमेजेस हमने अपलोड किए हैं और हमने उसको ये चेक करना है वेदर द AI कि वो इतना एफिशिएंट है कि वो उसको डिटेक्ट कर सके विद द ऑप्टिमम रीडिंग्स या नहीं. So the overall test accuracy, as you can see, is 0.887, and the hyperparameters which are this accuracy were obtained were 200 for the number of epochs, 256 for the batch size, and 0.005 for the learning rate. So इसमें मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट बात ये है कि जो आप हाइपर पैरामीटर्स इसमें सेट करेंगे टू फाइंड आउट इन द AI मॉडल टू फाइंड आउट द स्ट्रैबिस्मस विच इज़ ऑफ जो उसके नंबर ऑफ इपॉक्स होंगे वो 200 पे हमेशा सेट होंगे एंड 256 फॉर द बैच साइड. अगर आप ये वाले इसके पैरामीटर्स सेट करेंगे तो आपकी जो ओवरऑल टेस्ट की एक्यूरेसी होगी वो 0.887 होगी. जो इमेजेस वी हैड अपलोडेड टू द AI प्लेटफॉर्म तो उन्होंने उसको डिटेक्ट किया और उसकी टाइप ऑफ स्ट्रैबिस्मस को बताया. अगर हम इसके बाद में बात करें, इन द TM मॉडल ट्रेन विद दीज पैरामीटर्स, एक्यूरेसी वैल्यूज़ अगर हम इंडिविजुअल स्ट्रैबिस्मिक वैल्यूज़ फाइंड आउट करें तो हमें इजोट्रोपिया की हमें जो एक्यूरेसी मिली थी वो 0.96 थी, ऑर्थोफोरिया की मिली थी 0.78, वाइल XT की हमें मिली थी 0.9 इन द सब ग्रुप्स रिस्पेक्टिवली, अगर हम इंडिविजुअल इसको लेवल पे बात करें तो अगर मैं स्टडी को कंक्लूड करूँ तो we can say that to achieve optimal accuracy at the stage of development of artificial intelligence model, users should determine the appropriate hyperparameter values depending on the size of available database and the complexity of data. सिर्फ आपको उसके हाइपर पैरामीटर्स पता होना चाहिए TM मॉडल के. यूजर सिंपली राइट डाउन योर हाइपर पैरामीटर्स जो मैंने प्रीवियसली एक्सप्लेन किए हैं और आपको उस एक्यूरेसी के साथ रिजल्ट्स मिल जाएंगे. The results we obtained determining the optimum hyperparameters have revealed that the presence of strabismus can be detected with the help of TM.
Time is over,
Okay,
please.
sir. Internet-based machine. Thank you. Any question?
Your topic was very good
Thank you, sir.
and good innovation. That's the question है तो audience का बताइए.
जी जी. It's all about the manifest deviation strabismus only, not about Fourier's. Yes, okay. So अभी तक जो अगर हम बात की जाए 2023 का जो TM मॉडल अवेलेबल है इंटरनेट पे ऑन द गूगल, जो आप सिंपली उसको ऑनलाइन अवेलेबल कर सकते हैं, वो सिर्फ टाइप ऑफ स्ट्रैबिस्मस बता सकता है और बहुत ही मतलब मेजर किस्म का अगर कोई स्ट्रैबिस्मिक होगा तो वो एक एक्यूरेसी तो नहीं होगी बट वो लमसम आपको आइडिया के साथ बता देगा कि इसको फॉर एग्जांपल 45 XT आ रहा है, बट वो इट्स नॉट दैट एक्यूरेट.
इज देयर अ रेंज कि इतने से इतने तक का वो बता रहा है, कोई मिनिमम उस तरह से भी है लाइक माइक्रोट्रोपिया या इस तरह से, आप एक जस्ट एक स्पेसिफिक रेंज है कि इतना ही वो डायग्नोज कर सकता है?
ओके, एज आई सेड कि मैंने आपको बताया कि अभी तक जो मॉडल अवेलेबल है वो सिर्फ मैनिफेस्ट डेविएशन के बारे में बता रहा है, ठीक है. इट्स ओनली बता रहा है कि इसको XT है या ये ऑर्थोफोरिया है या ET है.
कि जैसे 5 डायोप्टर से शुरू हो रहे हैं, 10 डायोप्टर से शुरू हो रहे हैं, ऐसा भी कुछ है उसकी रेंज के इतने डायोप्टर से लेके इतने तक को डिटेक्ट कर सकता है वो AI मॉडल?
नहीं, उसकी कोई रेंज नहीं है. वो अगर आपका 20 डायोप्टर से अबव का होगा वो भी इतनी एक्यूरेसी के साथ नहीं बताएगा. मेरे टेस्ट रिजल्ट्स भी मैंने आपको जो बताए हैं वो 0.81% है, जिसका मतलब ये है कि 100% ये नहीं है. अगर AI मॉडल उसको 20 कह रहा है तो एक्चुअल वो 20 नहीं है. समवेयर लाइज बिटवीन 10 to 20 डिग्री डायोप्टर.
थैंक यू वेरी मच.
Thank you,
बहुत
sir.
अच्छा. आजकल बहुत ज़्यादा यूज़ हो रही है ये AI बहुत जगहों पर गए हुए. तो अब है रिजवान हसन. रिजवान.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Sayyid Rizwan Hassan and my topic is CNV on angio-OCT. OCT angiography is a new technology that has the great ability to show the retinal and choroidal microcirculation in detail without invasive means. Conventional CNV evaluation consists of multimodal imaging with fluorescent angiography and ICG and OCT. These modalities can guide effective CNV management but have their limitations, especially when characterizing vascular structure at different depth. OCT angiography, on other hand, allow for non-invasive three-dimensional analysis of retinal and choroidal vasculature and can be segmented to view each of vascular plexus individually. There is 3 types of CNV. A patient came at National Eye Center for refractive surgery. His best corrected visual acuity 615 in right eye and 636 in left eye with high myopic number and cylindrical number. And near vision right eye was N5 and left eye was N12. When we see clinically, his left fovea reflex were altered. Now we advise OCT. This is superficial plexus shows no change in vascular caliber, and deep capillary plexus also shows no change in any vascular caliber. But when we see at the outer retina and at the level of choriocapillaris, we see a very fine hyper-reflective branching lesion at the center of fovea. This is CNV. अगर ये पेशेंट आपका सिंपल ओसीटी करवाता तो उसके ऊपर उसकी आरपी की कोई फाइब्रोसिस कोई चेंज नज़र आ जाती, जो कि एनजीओ ओसीटी करने से उसकी सीएनवी बड़ी अच्छी तरह डायग्नोज हो गई। ये उसी पेशेंट का आउटर रेटिनोकोरियोकैपिलरिस लेवल है। दिस इज अनदर पिक्चर, यू कैन सी दिस इज थिकनिंग ऑफ आरपीएम ब्रुक्स मेम्ब्रेन complex with cystic cavities leading to macular edema. This is the same angio-OCT of same patient. You can see a very fine hyper-reflective branching pattern at the level of outer retina and choriocapillaris. This is CNV. Here is another picture. You can see a thickening of RP and Brooks membrane complex with subretinal fluid and edema of intraretinal layer. This is CNV, and this is simple OCT. This shows the superficial and weak capillary plexus shows no significant change at the vascular plexus, but at the level of outer retina and choriocapillaris, you see in a white hyperreflective lesion. This is CNV. This is another picture. You can see this picture. You can say this is only a CSCR. या आपको आरपी के लेवल के ऊपर कुछ चेंज नजर आ रही होगी। बहुत एक्सपर्ट बंदे तो इसको कह देंगे कि ये CNV है, लेकिन नॉर्मली इसको देख के आपको लगता है कि ये CSCR। लेकिन जब इसी पेशेंट का हमने एनजीओसीटी किया तो आपको एट द लेवल ऑफ आउटर रेटिना एंड कोरियोकैपिलरिस यू सी अ वेरी फाइन हाइपर रिफ्लेक्टिव ब्रांचिंग पैटर्न। दिस इज CNV। अब हमारे पास जो CNV के केसेस होते थे उनको रूल आउट करने के लिए मोस्टली तौर पे FFA एडवाइस किया जाता था। अब FFA मोर देन 700 FFA मैं अपने 10 साल कैरियर में कर चुका हूँ, लेकिन वो एक स्ट्रेस वाला प्रोसीजर है। सबसे पहले आपने उसकी लैब्स करवानी है, सबसे पहले आपने उसको एक एनेस्थीसिया वाले डॉक्टर का अवेलेबल जो प्रोटोकॉल है वो तो होना ज़रूरी है, और उसमें बेशुमार कॉम्प्लिकेशन, आपके स्किन रैशेज, नाजिया, वॉमिटिंग, रेनल फेलुअर, इवन कुछ लाहौर में कुछ पेशेंट की ड्यू टू FFA डेथ भी रिपोर्ट हुई है। लेकिन जो OCT एनजीओ है ये बिल्कुल नॉन इन्वेसिव प्रोसीजर है, सेफ प्रोसीजर है, और हमारे हॉस्पिटल नेशनल आई सेंटर में हमारा मोर देन 90% FFA कन्वर्ट हो गया है एनजीओसीटी पे। तो इस प्रेजेंटेशन का एक मकसद ये है कि जब आप CNV को रूल आउट करने के लिए, जब आपको सिंपल OCT पे समझ ना आ रही हो तो आपने FFA की बजाय NGO-OCT रेफर करना है। थैंक यू सो मच।
वेरी गुड।
एनी क्वेश्चन?
क्वेश्चन तो नहीं है वैसे। क्या ये पेपर लास्ट ईयर भी पढ़ा था आपने?
सर उसमें कुछ चेंजेस थे।
हाँ फिर ठीक है। थैंक यू वेरी मच। Zubair Nazar. Zubair will be his talk is on the assessment of the clinical impact of trans PRK and femtoLASIK.
Today the topic of my presentation is assessment of clinical impact of trans PRK and femtosecond LASIK in myopic and astigmatic patients. The objective of our study was to compare and assess of the result of both these surgical procedures. As we know that both these surgical procedures are used to correct the refractive error, but in this study we compared between visual acuity, contrast sensitivity and the higher order aberrations. This study was held at Amir Eye Hospital, Rawalpindi. The duration was this study was about 1 year. This was an experimental longitudinal design study, and non-probability sampling technique was used to collect the data. And we analyzed the data by repeated Mayer ANOVA and independent t-test. This is our inclusion and exclusion criteria. The most important thing in this, we kept the patient in under 500 microns to compare the results. We analyze an SPSS 25 version. This was our procedure to collect the data. We made an insert for pharma and detailed history of the patient's ocular history, ocular examinations, then visual acuity, contrast sensitivity, topography, examiner. Then we made about 3 and 4 follow-ups. and this study is further continued. This study shows that trans-PRK give better result as compared to femtosecond LASIK in contrast sensitivity, higher order aberrations, and VL acuity. As we know that both these surgical procedure give better results, but comparatively, when we talk about comparison, trans-PRK give better results. The recommendations was this: we recommend patients and these procedures according to the thickness and the patient conditions. Thank you so much. Any question? Yes. Any question?
हैंड के लिए
Any question? Thank you. Any other question? Yes. नहीं, हमने इनको असेस किया 7 डे के बाद, 1 मंथ के बाद एंड 6 मंथ के बाद, और अभी हमारे इसके फर्दर भी हम इस स्टडी को आगे लेके चल रहे हैं कि फर्दर इसके ऊपर कितनी चेंजेस आती है आपके कॉर्निया के ऊपर. जी यस जी, हमने बेसिकली कंपैरिजन किया इसका कि 7 डेज के बाद इनके कौन सा बेटर रिजल्ट देता है. पेशेंट के कंफर्टेबल लेवल के हवाले से भी सारी चीज़ें हमने मैयर की. ठीक है, कि पेशेंट का कंफर्ट भी, और बेसिकली हमारा था क्लिनिकल जो है ना असेसमेंट हमने करनी थी, कि इसमें हमने तमाम चीज़ें वास्टली इसको देखा है. ठीक है, तो हमने पेशेंट का बेसिकली सर्जिकल प्रोसीजर से लेके उसके फर्दर तमाम जितने भी फॉलोअप्स हैं तमाम में हमने उनकी जो डेटा को मैयर किया, ताकि हम इसको मैयर कर सकें कि कौन से आप जो है ना सर्जिकल प्रोसीजर आपको बेटर जो है ना रिजल्ट्स देता है अकॉर्डिंग टू VL आउटकम्स एंड पेशेंट कंफर्ट.
बहुत अच्छा है. दिस इज गुड कि यू हैव मेंशन दिस थिंग, और दिस कम्स अंडर द लिमिटेशन ऑफ योर स्टडी. थैंक यू वेरी मच Zubair. And now I will request Sahrish Shahid. Sahrish, I think she has the topic is correlation between corneal epithelium thickness, tear film height, and Novian gland morphology in dry eye patient.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Today I'm here to present my recently done study project, that is correlation between corneal epithelium thickness, tear film height, meibomian gland morphology in dry eye using optical coherence tomography. Although we cannot use abbreviation in the title, but it was a long topic, that way I used the abbreviations over here to make it short. This was purely for academic purpose. There were no commercial value or any financial interest. I will talk about the introduction. We all already know that what dry eye is and what are the parameters that got compromised in a dry eye patient, and here are some symptoms that we face in a dry eye patient. If we talk about the literature, we see that Noteworthy in US study said that 1.68 million people in US were having dry eye disease. Out of them, 73.6 were females and 26.4 were male. In another study, Lauper said that the epithelium of the cornea supports the tear film and protect the underlying components. Those both parameters do matter in dry eye cases. Okay, now in another study, it was said that the lower eyelid is having typically 20 to 30 glands, and the upper eyelid having 25 to 40 meibomian glands, and any dystrophy in them can cause the illness of the eye. The objective of my study was to correlate the corneal epithelium thickness, tear film height, and meibomian gland morphology in the patient with dry eye using OCT. Here is the material and method. This was a correlation study. It was done in Mayo Hospital. The sample size was 70 eyes, and non-probability convenient sampling were used, and formula used were Pearson and Spearman. Sample were selected from both genders above age 18 years. All patients were cooperative and all were diagnosed cases of dry eye syndrome. And the patients having any other media opacity or other pathologies were excluded. This was the picture that how we verified either the case is actually of dry eye or not. We use slit lamp and fluorescein staining to verify the case either the person is having dry eye or not. After verification, we have done OCT and we measured these three parameters: the corneal epithelium, tear film, and meibomian gland. This is a picture of corneal epithelium. Actually, this is a picture of whole cornea, and in OCT we do have several calipers and we use those calipers. This thin layer is corneal epithelium, and by using different calipers we measured the thickness of the corneal epithelium from the required places. Like we measure from 30 different points and we take the mean of the corneal epithelium. Here is the picture of tear film. This is the place from where we can measure the tear film using different calipers from OCT. And this is the picture imaging of the meibomian gland. And here is the clear picture. You can see here we can make grading that either the person is having grade 1, 2, 3. And there are different international scales available to make grading for the meibomian gland dystrophies. After collecting the data, those were the results. Here we used Pearson correlation because both these parameters were quantitative, and it was negative correlation, that is minus 0.128 between corneal epithelium and tear film. And between corneal epithelium and meibomian gland we used Spearman because one of them was with grading and other one was with quantitative data, and the correlation was 0.099. And between tear film height and meibomian gland it was the correlation 0.056, and here again we use the Spearman-Rahu formula. Here is the graphical presentation of my result. Here is the tear film height, here is the corneal epithelium thickness, and these different colors are showing the grading of the meibomian gland, and these all bubbles are randomly placed. So we concluded that there is negative or no correlation between corneal epithelium and tear film, and there is weak correlation between corneal epithelium and meibomian gland, and there is a moderate correlation between tear film and meibomian gland. If we increase the sample size, or we do the same study between rural and urban areas, or between screen users and non-screen users, the results can be very varied again. If you have any queries, you can ask. Thank you. अच्छा, जिस तरह मैंने वो लिटरेचर में भी शो किया कि अपर लिड और लोअर लिड में हमें meibomian ग्लैंड्स एग्जैक्टली पता होते हैं कि वो कितने हैं. जैसे ड्राई आई का पेशेंट आता है, प्रेजेंट करता है, तो वो टॉर्शियस होना शुरू हो जाते हैं ग्लैंड्स, एंड विद द पैसेज ऑफ टाइम वो पैच प्रॉपरली डिसअपियर होने शुरू हो जाते हैं. और इंटरनेशनली बहुत सारे स्केल्स अवेलेबल हैं जिससे हम उसकी ग्रेडिंग कर सकते हैं.
कह रहा था ना कि हम ओसीटी यूज करके देखते हैं. ओसीटी से कैसे पता?
ओसीटी से उसकी इमेज की ना, इमेजिंग की.
ओसीटी से हमने मेजर किया.
ओसीटी से ही किए.
हम इसकी जगह पे टीयर्स कॉपी यूज करते हैं, उससे हमें तीनों चीजें.
Obviously you have 100 of options. That was just my study because I was thinking how reliable it is if we do it on OCT.
तो है ना, ओसीटी के थ्रू अगर आप करेंगे ना तो आपके पास वो तो आ गया, corneal epithelium का साइज तो आ गया, लेकिन अगर हम टीयर फिल्म हाइट की बात करते हैं, ये वो आएंगे तो दैट विल बी सब्जेक्टिव मेजरमेंट, नॉट ऑब्जेक्टिव मेजरमेंट. Now you are comparing two different things, objective measurement with subjective measurement.
Exactly.
ठीक है, जब हम इस तरह का ये करते हैं तो फिर हमारे पास डाटा उस तरह रिलायबिलिटी नहीं आती जिस तरह हम करना चाहते
उसमें when I was doing this study, तो ये मेरा टॉपिक था एकेडमिकली भी, तो उसमें ये काफ़ी सारे इस तरह के क्वेश्चंस तब भी थे. इसी वजह से उसमें हमने डिफरेंट फार्मूलाज अप्लाई किए थे, लाइक क्वांटिटेटिव भी और क्वालिटेटिव भी. इसीलिए मैंने दोनों फार्मूलाज यूज़ किए, स्पेयरमैन भी और पियर्सन भी. दैट वाज द रीज़न दैट आई यूज बोथ फार्मूलाज. Thank you so much.
थैंक यू सैरिश. बड़ा रेलिवेंट क्वेश्चन थे, वेल प्रिपेयर्ड. आमना हाशमी है, फातिमा सादिक. She will be having topic on the difference in visual acuity and contrast sensitivity before and after the use of cyclopentolate. इनके बाद कोई है तो हाथ खड़ा करें आपके अलावा। अच्छा ठीक ठीक।
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Myself Fatma Sadiq. The topic was difference in visual acuity and contrast sensitivity before and after the use of cyclopentolate, low myopes versus low hyperops in school-age children. Visual acuity, as we all know, it is the ability of the eye to differentiate two spatially separated targets, and it is basically the dioptric. It is the function of the dioptric apparatus of the human eye. Visual acuity in infants, it is recorded qualitatively, while in younger children and adults, it is recorded quantitatively. Two types of the charts were used: Snellen based charts and Logmar. Snellen was used at 6 meter and Logmar based chart was used at 4 centimeter. Logmar based charts have continuous and proper progression and crowding effect. And the second thing is near visual acuity. It was recorded on different types of charts which were used at mostly preferably working distance, which is 40 centimeter. Contrast sensitivity, it is the ability to differentiate slight changes in luminance which are not separated by definite borders. Different types of charts are used like hiding Heidi, Dia numbers, Perry Robson. To obtain the cycloplegic effect, cyclopentolate is the most preferable drug of choice because it has a short duration of action and less side effects as compared to other cycloplegic drugs. It acts on the ciliary muscles and block the receptor site of acetylcholine, which results in the pupil dilation and paralysis of accommodation. Different studies have been conducted in the past to check any change in visual acuity after the dilation of pupil. One study shows that there occurs only a 1 line difference after the dilation of pupil, and different studies shows that due to the refractive errors or due to the increase in the size of pupil, the contrast sensitivity changes. This study was conducted while using cyclopentolate to detect measure the change, the difference in visual acuity and contrast before and after cycloplegia. Two major objectives of this study is to compare the difference in near and distance visual acuity, and the second is contrast sensitivity before and after cycloplegia in low error myopes and hyperops. And the study was quasi experimental study. Sample size was 216 eyes. Participants having age from 5 to 13 years were included in this study. Non-probability convenience sampling technique was used. Self-designed proforma was used, and consent was also taken from the guardian of the children. And 1% cyclopentolate eye drops were used. Study was conducted after obtaining ethical clearance from Ethical Review Board, the College of Ophthalmology, and Leibnizian Sciences. Wilcoxon sign rank test was applied to check the significance of the results. Out of 108 participants, 55 were male and 53 were female. Half of the participants have myopia and half have hyperopia. Wilcoxon sign rank test applied, which shows a significant difference between contrast sensitivity and visual acuity in myopes and hyperops. Low error myopes showed a difference in near visual acuity of 8.93 lines, while hyperops shows 10.3, while low myopes distance visual acuity difference was 1.3, and low error hyperops had 2.8 lines. Contrast sensitivity difference was 0.1 in low myopes and 0.17 in low hyperops. Conclusion of this study was that there is a significant difference in near and distance visual acuity and contrast sensitivity of low myopes and hyperops before and after cycloplegia. Visual acuity and contrast decreased as because the ciliary muscles relax and pupil dilate. Low error hyperops show more difference in decrease in visual acuity and contrast as compared to low error myopes. Any questions?
Good, well done. फातिमा, थैंक यू वेरी मच. इसके ऊपर साइक्लोपेंटोलेट के ऊपर, एट्रोपिन के ऊपर आजकल बहुत ज़्यादा काम हो रहा है. उनकी मायोपिया के हवाले से, हाइपरमेट्रोपिया के हवाले से, तो लॉट ऑफ पोटेंशियल इन दिस टॉपिक्स नाउ. अच्छा, अब हैं गजाला आरिफ. शी विल बी प्रेजेंटिंग ऑन रिलेशनशिप ऑफ द रिफ्रैक्टिव स्टेटस विद न्यू बॉर्न बर्थ, वेट एंड gestational age.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. So my topic of presentation is relationship of refractive status with newborns, birth weight and gestational age. So I would just like to tell you a brief introduction that why I chose this topic. As we all know there is association of premature babies with retinopathy of prematurity. Many articles being written on this, but I just wanted to study that what would happen if the child is premature and there is no ROP. What would happen to his or her eyes if there is no ROP? So ROP is in my exclusion criteria. And the other thing that I wanted to study is that what if the child is full term but his or her birth weight is very low, then what would happen to his or her eyes? So I would give you a brief introduction. That is the global impact of my studies. That is that 1.5 million children are blind worldwide. So the main cause of the childhood blindness is the uncorrected refractive errors. As we all know that visual development is a long and the tedious process. Even after the birth of the babies, the visual development is not complete. But if the child is full term and healthy, it's a safe and healthy process which is called emetropization. So in my case, the babies that are born on the full term and the premature, if they are having hypermetropia between 2 to 3 diopters, they would be considered as emetropes, not as hyperopes. And below that refractive error, I mean they could have myopia and hyperopia as well. So the visual development completes usually 2 to 3 years at the age in the full term or the normal babies. While premature babies, they could face severe visual problems to moderate visual problems, and there is chances that 25 to 33% permanent visual problems can occur in the premature babies. And there is the term that we use, myopia of prematurity, that happens in the absence of ROP, and there is chance that 25% of these children, premature babies, develop myopia. And it is being studied that why myopia develops in the premature babies. As they have a shorter head, they could we can think that they couldn't develop myopia, but there is a research that is being conducted that they have a thin choroid, which is being stated that 3 millimeter temporal of fovea, that their choroid is thin, which results in the increased axial length of these babies that could result in the production of myopia. So, and the other thing is which could result in this is the premature babies, and the other thing is the child is full term but he is having low birth weight. What could cause the low birth weight of the babies is IUGR. IUGR is intrauterine growth restriction, and there are factors that could result in the IUGR. And uterus of the mother is the main element that promotes the proper growth or a healthy growth of the fetal during the fetal growth. And there are certain chemicals that are very necessary for the growth of the eye during fetal growth. That is retinoic acid, which is the metabolite of vitamin A. So vitamin A, as we all know, is the very important factor in the growth of the eye, and insulin as well. And as the child is low birth weight, he or she could face many problems, like they have high metabolic rate, low energy levels. So it could result in the development of the reduced retinal thickness, changes in amacrine cells and axons of the optic nerve, and the other thing is the photoreceptor cells of the outer layer of the retina. So my objective of the study is to evaluate the refractive status in the preterm babies and the full-term babies with low birth weight at their earliest life as possible. So we hypothesize that there is association of prematurity and low birth weight with refractive error, particularly myopia. So my research methodology was that I collected the sample. It was a correlational study being conducted at the Mew Hospital. Was on 60 non-pathological eye of 30 subjects, and my excluding criteria, as I already mentioned, was ROP and the any ocular pathology or corneal opacity. So I collected data I measured the weight of the baby by weighing machine and gestational age via the LMP or the first ultrasound of the mother. And then I performed retinoscopy. I used tropicamide drops, 0.8% tropicamide drops as a cycloplegic agent. Then I did the retinoscopy and calculated the mean spherical equivalent. And the mean spherical equivalent means here is I have to designate the refractive error of the baby. So I calculated the mean spherical. I didn't go to the exact value. So I just wanted to designate the refractive error. That's why I took the mean spherical equivalent as it being mentioned in the literatures. So then the mean spherical equivalent was compared against gestational age and the birth weight of the babies. So then the results were being conducted, and it was I applied the Pearson correlation test and the independent sample Mann-Whitney U test. The Pearson correlation was found. There was the moderate correlation of mean spherical equivalent, yani ki refractive error, with the gestational age and birth weight. So we can see the value here. It's 0.5 and 0.6 in gestational age and birth weights. And then I applied Mann-Whitney U test, which is show that there is significant difference between emmetropes and myopes according to the gestational age, birth weight, and mean spherical equivalent of the babies. So we concluded that as the gestational age and birth weight decreases, the risk of being myopic increases. As we all know, the 75% of the child learning is through the visual learning. The child doesn't learn through speaking or any other activity. He learns through visual learning. So it is very necessary to correct the vision or the proper functioning of the visual system at the earliest age as possible. So the take-home message would be the parents should be well aware that if their child is low birth weight or having gestational age less than 34 weeks, 35 weeks, he or she should do the self-reference, should go to the clinician, should go to the optometrist, should go to the ophthalmologist for the screening of her child. As early screening could be done immediately after the birth, so we can have the prompt diagnosis and we can normalize them. Okay? And the factor that can be ignored that are dangerous to the during the fetal growth are the malnutrition, alcohol abuse, drugs, and the other thing is advanced maternal age could be the dangerous factors for the development of low gestational age and the low birth babies. So with my research, individual will get awareness and become more conscious regarding their children's visual status and can be helpful to avoid permanent visual impairment. Any question?
ये बहुत ही एक इंफॉर्मेशन है आप सबको लिए, बड़ा इस पे काम करना चाहिए। वो बच्चे जो कि 34 या से 34 गेस्टेशनल एज से कम जल्दी पैदा होते हैं या फिर जिनका वेट 2500 से कम होता है, ये उनके लिए बहुत ज़रूरी है जनरली सबके लिए कि उनकी ये चीज़ें लुक आफ्टर करें।
I would also like to add the normal weight lies between 2.5 kg to 4 kg, but below that 2.5 the weight of the normal baby is below 2.5 kg or 2 kg is the point that we should get them screened as early as possible, and the gestational age that we considered is below 35 weeks or 34 weeks, and below that 32 weeks, it could be 31, 32, 34. So we should get them screened, although they could develop ROP as they're being kept in the oxygen, but ROP wasn't included as there being many articles being already researched on it. So that's why ROP wasn't in my research.
Good, thank you very much. Now we have Sarish here to present her topic. Sharmeen. कोई और हमारे पास यहाँ पे पार्टिसिपेंट हैं जिनका नाम नहीं पुकारा हुआ हमने? बाकी पास
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you so much for listening so much presentations with the patients. Okay, today my topic is sleep deprivation can disrupt the lacrimal system and induce the dry eye. As we all know that the sleep is a fundamental physiological process that plays a crucial role in maintaining the overall health and well-being. So melatonin is the hormone which is responsible for the sleep induction, that is strongly influenced by the body's circadian rhythms, which is synchronized with the light and the dark cycles. So sleep deprivation can influence your circadian rhythm and can lead to the reduced parasympathetic stimulation to the lacrimal gland, and it can result in the decreased tear production. So parasympathetic stimulation mediated by the facial nerve and increase the tear production by activating the lacrimal gland. In our today's societies, which is 24/7, there is a significant portion of the workforce, such as the night job workers, that experience regularly the sleep deprivation due to their irregular sleep patterns. Night job workers face the challenges of working during the nighttime hours when their natural circadian rhythm disturbs, and the mismatch between their work schedules and their internal body clock can lead to the sleep deprivation and in associated health issues. So the purpose of the study is to investigate the extensive sleep deprivation prevail among the night job workers, including the assessment of duration, frequency, and the severity of the sleep disruption. So this was the objective of the study, that the sleep deprivation can affect the tear quantity among the night job workers. So the methodology was the 130 participants were included in this study, and the participants of both genders were included from 20 to 40 years of age who sleeps less than for 7 hours, and participants with any history of medication, ocular disease, or surgery, or the greater screen time than 5 hours were excluded. So for the data collection purpose, Schirmer's test 2 and Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index and Ocular Surface Index 2 was used. These are the international performers which are used to measure the sleep quantity. So data was collected by using the Schirmer's test 2 and the Pittsburgh Sleep Quantity Index and Ocular Surface Disease Index. Pittsburgh Sleep Quantity Index shows us scores which are calculated by it's a standard procedure to get that the sleep quantity and the ocular surface distance. Okay, the results. On analysis, I found it that the results, this is the descriptive statistics of the Schirmer's test 2 right eye and the left eye. Okay, come to the main results, that we found it the correlation between the Pittsburgh sleep quality and the ocular surface disease index scoring. We found it that there was a significant relation between the Pittsburgh sleep quality and the index square in the ocular surface disease scoring. So it was found that as the sleep quality disturbs, the Schirmer test readings were down. There is a negative relationship between the sleep quality and the Schirmer's test. So it was concluded that the people who have a severe dry eye would have, this was also measured that the people who take the regular sleeps about 2 to 3 hours or 4 to 5 hours or 6 to 7 hours or more than 8 hours, how it impacts their Schirmer's quantity reading, how it impacts their dry eye. So it was found that the severe dry eye was found in people who regularly sleeps less than 2 to 3 hours, or the moderate dry was found mild, and this is how grading was done on both the eyes, right and the left eye. So it was concluded that sleep deprivation does have an effect on the tear quantity. The finding of this study showed that the more sleep deprivation caused less tear quantity and the more dry eyes. So the take-home message is to get that enough quality of sleep. Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Shammi. Enough quantity means 6 hours. Huh?
No, the standard pattern is to get at 8 hours. 8 hours sleep is required. So in the literature review, we studied that the people who chronically sleeps even live the less than 7 hours, they face the dry eye.
ठीक, चलो we have good practice of 8 hours.
Thank you.
जी. Lubna Amrit, her topic is to assess the knowledge of people regarding cognitiveness, marriages on eye health and attitude regarding marriages in rural and urban areas of Chakwal. Lubna.
Labina Amrit. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Labina Amrit, optometrist RSC Jhatla from district Chakwal.
Labina.
Topic of my presentation is knowledge and attitude regarding cousin marriages on eye health in rural and urban areas of Chakwal. Introduction. Consanguinity, an alarm-raising word, if paired with a hereditary disease, refers to the marriage between close relatives. Pakistan has highest consanguinity rate according to researches About 62% of all marriages are cousin, and 50% among them are first cousin marriages. Factors associated with consanguinity are attitude, knowledge, geography, and religion. Some of eye diseases related to cousin marriages include squint, myopia, night blindness, nystagmus, retinitis pigmentosa. Methodology. Study design was comparative cross-sectional study. Study setting was community-based study carried out at the outdoor patient who visited the camps organized by Al-Shifa Trust Eye Hospital in rural and urban areas of Chakwal. Data was collected over the duration of 4 months. Sample strategy was convenient sampling. Data collection tool used was interview-based questionnaire that was typed both in English and Urdu to increase the convenience for participants and to increase the uniformity in the questions posed to respondents. Results. A total of 382 patients fulfilled the inclusion criteria and agreed to participate in the study. Equal male and female participants were taken. Analysis was carried out in 2 steps, descriptive statistic followed by inferential statistics. Chi-square was used to find the association between variable and independent outcome variables and independent variables. 90.1% of respondents were married, while 46.1% did not know about consanguinity. 61.3% had no idea of any effect of cousin marriages on eye. 64.9% people don't know any disease due to cousin marriages. 59.7% respondents supported cousin marriages. Majority of respondents shows 88.2% said premarital screening tests should be done before cousin marriages. This is the socio-demographic characteristics. As I discussed earlier, equal male and female were taken and equal rural and urban people were included in this. Among these, 91% were married and 9.9% were unmarried. This graph is showing most of respondents, 51.6% were married to cousin among the 90.1%. Out of 382 respondents, 64.9% individual don't know the eye health risk related to cousin marriages. Only 35% had awareness about the eye diseases related to cousin marriages. Maximum individuals, 87.4%, don't know any disease due to cousin marriages. This is the association between knowledge and socio-demographics. According to this, education and knowledge has strong association. Those people having knowledge have good at having good knowledge to those people having the this is the association between attitude and demographics, as this is the main point, that is knowledge and attitude association. The chi-square test was used to perform the knowledge and attitude score. Respondents who have good knowledge and good attitude about the cousin marriages, it's mean there is a strong association between the knowledge score and attitude. Similarly, the chi-square test was performed to find the association between attitude and various demographics. This shows the result was statistically significant between the education and attitude for the people. Educated people had negative attitude toward cousin marriages rather than illiterate. Similarly, there is a strong association between the attitude and the parental history of cousin marriages among the people. Conclusion is, this study showed knowledge regarding the cousin marriages in eye health among the people was not found to be adequate, and majority of participants have positive attitude. This may be due to the lack of high literacy rate in Pakistan. There is a strong association between knowledge and attitude of people. Rural people have slightly more knowledge than urban people, and male respondents had slightly more positive attitude toward cousin marriages. The knowledge regarding cousin marriages on eye health among the people was high with negative attitude. Hence, there is need to educate and motivate the people to reduce the frequent cousin marriage in Pakistan to prevent congenital and hereditary diseases. Thank you.
Very good. थैंक यू वेरी मच. एनी क्वेश्चन फॉर द ऑडियंस? तो ये स्टडी आपने पब्लिश करवाई है किसी जगह पे?
जी सर, इसका डाटा वगैरह गया हुआ है, लेकिन अभी नेक्स्ट मंथ में इंशाल्लाह पब्लिश हो जाएगी.
तो मुझे बताइएगा कि ये कैसे मुमकिन हुआ था कि आपने इक्वल नंबर मेल फीमेल लिए और अर्बन रूरल भी इक्वल थे?
सर मैं कैंप में जाती होती थी अलशिफा के साथ, वो ऑर्गेनाइज करते थे रूरल एंड अर्बन एरियाज़ में. तो फिर मेरा ये क्राइटेरिया था, इस वजह से मैं मतलब कि कोशिश ये करती थी कि रूरल एरिया में जाती थी. 2-3 कैंप्स मैंने वहाँ पे किए, वहाँ से डाटा कलेक्ट किया. इसी तरह से फिर मैं 2-3 कैंप्स ऐसे गई जो अर्बन थे, वहाँ से डाटा कलेक्ट किया.
हाँ, कन्वीनियंट
और-
सैंपल आपने लिए.
जी सर.
वेरी गुड. अच्छा, अब नेक्स्ट प्लीज शजीना जबीन. शजीना जबीन, she is also from Chakwal. Effect of ergonomic practices on computer vision syndrome among undergraduates and postgraduate. शजीना, आपका टॉपिक किसी और ने भी प्रेजेंट किया है? शजीना.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Shajia Jabeen and I'm from optometrist from RHC Buchal district Chakwal. The topic of my research was effect of ergonomic practices on computer vision syndrome symptoms among undergraduate and postgraduate IT students of University of Chakwal. Talking about computer vision syndrome. Computer vision syndrome is a complex of eye and vision related problems during the use of computers and gadgets, which stress the near vision and other problems like headache and ocular and extraocular problems. Ergonomic practices. Ergonomic practices is basically the fitting the task to the worker. As you can see in the diagram, rationale of the study: in the absence of good ergonomic design, extended work for prolonged periods can adversely affect not only vision but also the muscles of neck, upper back, shoulders and arms, leading to visual and muscular fatigue and discomfort, musculoskeletal conditions. So it's essential to aware IT users about the pros and cons of bad ergonomic practices. There was no such study yet held in Chakwal. The main objectives of the study were to find the association between the effect of ergonomic practices on computer vision syndrome. Here's the materials and methodology. A cross-sectional descriptive study was done in the IT department of the University of Chakwal from the time period of October to December 2021. About 65 undergraduates and postgraduate IT students studying in the University of Chakwal were enrolled through consecutive sampling. Students using computers and having symptoms of CVS, computer vision syndrome, refractive error and convergence insufficiency were included. The data was gathered for visual acuity in response to different ergonomics using a self-administered questionnaire and was analyzed by the SPSS 25 and Microsoft Excel 2016, and the p-value less than 0.05 was taken as significant. Here's the result. Gathering all the data of association of ergonomic practices and CVS, the total number of students were 65, undergraduates were 72.3. The percentage with severe neck and shoulder pain was 55.4. Percentage with dryness of eyes were 55.4. Percentage using computer for 1 to 4 hours per day was 39%. Talking about the correlation between ergonomic practices and computer vision syndrome, blinking and watering of eyes, the people who are using a computer for less than 1 to 4 hours have less blinking and watering of eyes. Eye strain, there was a significant association between eye strain and the people who are using computer for 1 to 4 hours. The people who were using computer for less than 1 to 4 hours were having mild headache, and the p-value was less than 0.02, and there was also a significant association between minimal photophobia and the people using computer less than 1 to 4 hours. Taking breaks up to 1 hour, there were also a significant relation with mild eye burning, crossing, and redness. This was the discussion with the previous study. Frequency of neck pain in my study was 80%, and in the previous study was 75%. And the eye straining time spent on computer has a significant relation, while in other previous studies there was no significant. Eye strain has significant relation with time period spent on computer. So here's the conclusions. IT students had moderate to severe dryness of eyes, neck and shoulder pain, not spending more than 4 consecutive hours on computer work, and taking at least 1 hour break is imperative to avoid severe symptoms. Thank you.
बताइए खालिद.
A little bit changes were done in the questionnaire depending upon the ergonomic practices and CVS. Yes, I did. I don't remember right now. It was done 2 years before, and so I don't remember right now. Yes.
This is my one message with the permission of the chairman. Please do not use the self-administrated Western Performer until it is verified through the Delphi technique and have a good Cronbach alpha value, and it should be more than 0.8 or good. It would be the good if it's a 0.9. So
Maybe it can be pilot tested before, whatever you design it. Thank you. Sana, our last speaker here, she will present to assess the role of IGF-1 polymorphism in causing high myopia in Pakistani population. कोई और स्पीकर है यहाँ पे जिसका नाम ना पुकारा हो?
Assalamualaikum. My name is Sana Tariq. I am working as an optometrist in THQ Hospital Tadagang under CBM Peak Project Pakistan. The topic of my presentation is role of IGF-1 polymorphism RS6214 in causing high myopia in Pakistani population. The aim and objective of the current study is to determine the genetic analysis of high myopia in Pakistani population. This is done by determining the role of single nucleotide polymorphism RS6214 of IGF-1 gene by revealing the genotypes in controls and high myopes. Basically, IGF-1 is insulin growth factor 1. This is a gene associated in the process of embryogenesis, and this gene is also involved in causing certain diseases such as diabetic retinopathy, retinopathy of prematurity, age-related macular degeneration, and this gene is also involved in causing high myopia in Chinese population. This was a case control study. Patients were recruited from the Amir High Hospital, Rawalpindi, and all the lab work were done in the ComStat University, Islamabad from January 2022 to January 2023 under the supervision of Dr. Muhammad Ajmal. Methodology. First of all, ethical declaration was sought out from the Departmental Ethical Review Board of ComStat University, Islamabad. After the approval, blood samples were collected from the patients as well as from the controls. DNA were extracted from the whole blood sample. Side-by-side primers were also designed for the tetra-arm PCR amplification, and in the end, genotyping was done by using ultraviolet transilluminator followed by the statistical analysis. This was a specially designed performer for the demographic data, and it also includes the visual acuity, best corrected visual acuity, keratometric reading, biometry, and IOL measurements. Results. These are the descriptive statistics for this of this study, which includes spherical equivalents of both eyes, keratometric readings of both eyes, and axial length of both eyes of only high myopes. Non-parametric tests were done to analyze the data statistically, and it shows that the p-value among the ages and the spherical equivalents of cases and controls is significant, as it is less than 0.05. Surprisingly, the p-value for the corneal curvature is p-value for the keratometric reading in controls and high myopes is greater than 0.05, which shows that corneal curvature is not causing the high myopia in our research group. Now, this is the correlation between the axial length and the spherical equivalent. Pearson correlation was used to correlate these, and it shows that increase in the axial length of about 1 millimeter can cause about 2.5 diopter increase in spherical equivalents of high myopes. Now, this is genotype-phenotype association of high myopes and controls, and it shows that IGF, insulin growth factor 1, is not causing high myopia in our population. While the allelic frequency distribution shows the significant difference, and it shows that T allele, which is basically the risk allele, is causing protective effect against the disease. Conclusion: there is non-significant difference between the keratometric readings of high myopes and control. Spherical equivalents of high myopes and control shows the significant difference, while the genotypic frequency distribution shows the insignificant difference, and it shows that insulin growth factor 1 is not causing disease, that is high myopia, in Pakistani population. The results of our study is contraindicated the results that was a study done in the Chinese population, where IGF-1 is involved in causing high myopia. And allelic frequency distribution shows that T allele, which is a risk allele, is showing protection against the disease. Thank you.
Any question, please? सना था कि आपका बड़ा अच्छा टॉपिक है, बड़ा पढ़ा लिखा टॉपिक है. तो ये क्या कि आपके इज इट वाज द पार्ट ऑफ सम योर पोस्ट ग्रेजुएट?
यस सर, मैंने एमएस किया कॉन्स्टेंट यूनिवर्सिटी इस्लामाबाद से, तो मैंने एमएस के थीसिस के लिए किया था.
ठीक. हु वाज योर सुपरवाइजर?
डॉक्टर मोहम्मद अजमल.
सही. तो विद दिस वी फिनिश दिस सेक्शन, एंड आप लोगों की शील्ड और सर्टिफिकेट शालीमार से आप लोग पिक करेंगे खुद, जहाँ रजिस्ट्रेशन हो रही है ना उसके अंदर वाले से. तो लेट्स हैव अ फोटोग्राफ विद ऑल द प्रेजेंटर्स हियर.